Welcome to episode number 166 of the Marine Layer podcast. The Mariners are hanging on for dear life in the postseason race after Game 1 in Houston. We'll comb through the Mariners weekend and the opener against the Astros.
If you guys want to help support us, and hopefully you guys do, the best thing you can do, hit subscribe on YouTube if you're watching. You see the big red button, hit it, leave this video a like, drop a comment. If you're listening to the podcast, download, rate and review 5 stars. All of it helps. And on social media, you guys are all on social. Come on. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, at Marine Layer Pod. Go hit us with a follow.
Let's get it rolling.
The pitch from Acevedo. A drive deep to right field. Down the line. The Mariners win this game 2-1. The dream lives. They're going to the playoffs. On one from Jansen. There you go. Left field. We got a tie ball game. Julio. Oh, baby, what a moment. Tie ball game at 7-7.
And we welcome you to this episode of the Marine Layer podcast, part of the Just Baseball Podcast Network. Recording Monday evening, September 23rd, post-game of Game 1 against the Houston Astros. The Mariners technically stay alive in the division race and are now a game and a half back of the American League wild card. Opening thoughts, Bryce Miller does have that dog in him. My God.
Well, that might have been his best start of the year. 7 shutout in Houston, backs against the wall, season basically on the line. Totally unfazed. And he was dominant. He was using all of his pitches, kept Houston off balance, didn't really give up much hard hit contact. You name it. Like, you want to talk about 2 guys in Bryce Miller and Bryan Woo who had their issues down the stretch last year. I know Woo didn't have his best start on Sunday. We can get to that later. But for Bryce Miller, 180. Bryce Miller wasn't doing this last year. Now he is.
And his season ERA is below 3 now. Bryce Miller's ERA is below 3. In the best case scenario preseason, if you told us Bryce Miller would have a 2.94 ERA on September 23rd, I'd say that's not possible. I don't feel like Bryce, or at least Bryce didn't feel like he's the run prevention type enough to do that. But man, oh man, since July 1st, he has a 2.01 ERA. Let me read it back to you. Over half of the season, 2.01. There's actually another stat, Lyle, that I think is a little more shocking when it comes to how good Bryce Miller has been. You know his road ERA since that point?
Low.
2.12. We spent a lot of time in multiple episodes talking about how he couldn't pitch on the road.
And by the way, that doesn't factor in this start against the Astros.
I know. That's insane.
So
That
it's
is
really
actually insane. And you balance that out with what he does at home. Is his ERA, his 2.94 ERA, ballooned a little bit, or whatever the opposite of ballooned is because of T-Mobile Park? Is his ERA significantly lower because of where he pitches his home games? Yes. I think we'd be crazy to say anything otherwise. But the fact he has Bryce freaking Miller has a 2.94 ERA here at the end of September. He's going to get one more start this season. I believe he's lined up to pitch the finale right now. What a remarkable stamp on Bryce Miller's season. Seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. Hopefully the Mariners are still somehow in it on the last day of the season, and his last start really matters. But, yeah, again, to do what he's done in the second half, build the stamina that he's building off of on year 1, pitch deep into games, late in the season, meaningful games, crucial games, and to go out and pitch like that, masterclass. He had 20 whiffs tonight, by the way, and it was pretty spread out with all the different pitches he likes to use. I mean, the guy had what? He had 6 on the 4-seam, 5 on the splitter, 3 on the curve, 2 on the slider, 1 on the cutter, and 3 on the sweeper. So you talk about mixing in all your pitches and getting guys to swing and miss at all your pitches. Again, this was a guy that was basically throwing 2 pitches by the end of last year. Not anymore.
And just think about how his start ended here on Monday. He could have unraveled. He could have fell apart, and the game could have been significantly different tonight. And this podcast could have a significantly different tone. Lyle and I could be a little bit more bitter and angry right now than we currently are if Bryce Miller has a bad 7th inning. But what did Bryce Miller do after he had 2 on and 1 out in the 7th inning, Lyle? He came back and he struck out the next 2 hitters. Even though he had been cruising to that point, and all of a sudden his pitch count balloons, he's laboring a little bit, he's probably tired. It's the end of the season. He's thrown a ton of innings. After today, he's going to be over 180 innings this season, by far the most he's ever thrown in a season. He could have easily just wilted at that point, but he didn't. He finished extremely strong, and the Mariners even got Edward Pizzardo in the game.
Well, shout out the offense for giving Edward Pizzardo the chance to pitch in the game. You know what usually happens in these games? The offense does absolutely nothing when a starter pitches really well like that. But they picked him up late in the game, a lot of insurance, strung some hits together, and they won by 5 runs. They won by 5. It was a full-fledged team effort win with all 3 sides of the ball doing their part and doing what they were supposed to do. We talked about the Mariners want to stay in this thing. They have to play their best 3 games of the season in this series against the Astros. And they're a third of the way there because that is about as good a game as you can play.
Now, will the Mariners make it through this series without the Astros celebrating a division win? I would say still unlikely, but you still got to feel very good for what the Mariners did here in Game 1. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the problem. Are we going to address the elephant in the room? That was yesterday. On Sunday.
Are we ready to? Actually, before we even get to that,
well,
I do have to do one negative thing here in this game.
Okay.
The team's base running is still just jaw-dropping unbelievable. Like Dylan Moore getting thrown out like that at third when you needed that insurance run at the time. Come on. Like, how many times can they make these base running mistakes over the course of 1 week?
Well, if I had an answer for you, I'd be a base coach and make more money.
As I said in our post-game reaction, well, it's probably Scott Service's fault.
Obviously.
Yeah.
He's the fall guy. He has to take the blame. Yeah. So these games, Lyle, against Houston would feel a little bit, they're pretty important, but I'd feel almost more important if the Mariners won yesterday. It didn't blow a 5-0 lead. I mean, I'm still struggling to process what happened on Sunday. I seriously am. And given where the Mariners would be position-wise right now, the ability to save their season and make the playoffs if they had just won on Sunday. It almost blows my mind what happened in Dallas. What happened in Arlington? 5-0 lead in the 6th inning. 5-0 lead against a non-playoff team in an insane pitching advantage matchup. Brian Wu versus Andrew Heaney. And they blow the game. I'm at a loss. They would be a half game out right now, the wild card race. Half game out. With, you would have passed the Twins by now, who are just in a spiral. They are in a spiral. And then the Royals, who don't have an easy schedule to finish the season, who are also spiraling. You'd be a half game behind them. And then it would be you and the Tigers in the wild card if you could finish strong. But instead now it's a game and a half. Like, think of how much bigger that feels now.
5-0. Like,
I forgot the most important part. This series would still you'd still have a chance to win the division.
Oh, yeah, you would, because if you were 4 out entering this series, you sweep, then you're a game out with 3 to play. The Astros have to play the Guardians. You're playing the A's at home, and you have the tiebreaker. Like, this is what they do. They just build you up all season long, and then when things get important, it looks like this.
And then there's a Sunday where literally everything possibly right happens. The Astros lose, the Royals lose, the Twins lose twice, and you have a 5-0 lead in the 6th inning against a non-playoff team.
And
what more could you ask for?
Again, I'm going through every game that just pissed me off beyond belief if the Mariners don't get into the playoffs, because as some social post next week, because the 8 games against the Angels, the Royals 8-0 blown lead, that game against the Rangers, honestly the game against the Rangers at home last Thursday, there's others
every single game against the Tigers.
Like, there's not every game against the Tigers, but there's some games against the Tigers, like the ones that Jimmy Garcia blew. Oh yeah, that one, those.
Well, at least 4 of those games against the Tigers, you probably should have won. They got blown out and won. But the rest of them...
Yeah, I'm going to be going through a lot of those games saying, Imagine if they just won a couple of these. Imagine if you actually hadn't scored 3 total runs at home in July against the Angels in 3 games. Imagine where you'd be right now. Or if you had just done what you were supposed to do against the Angels. See, the Astros beat the Angels in 3 of 4 this past weekend. Because the Astros are a contender, the Angels are a bottom feeder, and they took care of business. They won the series, even if they didn't sweep a 4-game series, which is hard for any team to do. The Mariners are 1-8 in their last 9 games against the Angels. 1-8. Imagine if you were 8-1. Imagine if you were 5-4 in those games.
It'd be a whole lot different. It is easy. Excuse me. It is really easy to hindsight the season, I would say. Like, certainly it is. I think every team can go comb through their season and find games that piss them off. What was different about Sunday is you understood what was at stake. You understood you literally could not afford to lose the game. Mm-hmm. You can afford to lose a game in August. You can afford to lose a game in July, June, May, and April. Wow, right? Any one of those months, you can lose games. You're going to lose probably 60 games a season at least, minimum, right? Am I correct?
Sure.
Yeah, so you can afford to lose games. But you know what happens when you get down to the final 2 weeks of the season and you painted yourself into a corner? You don't get that luxury anymore. You can't afford to lose games, especially when you open the week losing 2 of 3 to the Yankees and really just getting outclassed against the Yankees. Right? They showed they're a better team than you are, which sucks. But they showed it.
Well, and the only reason they scored 3 runs in that finale against the Yankees is because Jason Dominguez dropped a fly ball. Otherwise, you would have scored like a run again.
So that leads up to Sunday where you understand we hold a lead now. We've swung the bat well against the Rangers in the last week. We have to hold this lead. And it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And now the Mariners sit in the position they're in right now, which is unideal. Their playoff chances would be significantly higher right now if they had just won Sunday. Just forget the rest of the season. Just Sunday. Nothing else. One single game turns around that you had in hand on Sunday. And instead, it's not. Instead, it is... instead, it's just more on brand of what the Mariners have done forever for their history. Right? Mm-hmm. There is a reason, Lyle. They've only made the playoffs 5 times in 47 seasons. Little things like that. It sucks. It sucks for us as fans.
Well, or once in the last 22 seasons. It's on the verge of being 23. Yeah. Yes. This is what happens. And you want to give them credit because you know what? They won Friday and Saturday's game and they were the better team in those games. It really looked like they were going to make an absolute statement on the Rangers. And then it absolutely unraveled. Like, I can't give Munoz that much blame. Again, like, he's gonna give up a run every now and then. It would have been nice, obviously, if after getting those first 2 outs, he just got out of it. But number one, extra innings get very crazy and very fluky. Certainly know the Mariners haven't exactly always thrived in extra innings, like especially when they're tasked with scoring a run from second base with nobody out. Sometimes they don't manage to even score the ghost runner. But, yeah. Like, would it have been nice for Munoz to get those outs? Sure. But Chargois also gave up a homer. The Mariners didn't add on anymore. Obviously, some of this is on Wu because he gave up the big hit late into the 6th inning. Yeah, like, again, the Mariners could have added on. Rangers' bullpen's not good. But, yeah, like, they made such a statement Friday and Saturday. And then the kill in momentum is unreal on Sunday.
And now they have to win out.
Pretty much.
And if they win out, they will reach that 10-2 mark we set in final 12 games. It's unlikely.
Wouldn't they be 9-3?
Oh, they would. Damn it. I can't. See, we went to ASU. I'm going to use that excuse.
Uh-huh. Well,
not a math major. 9-3. 9-3 would be close, but might not be enough.
I mean, maybe they can lose one more, given how the rest of the field in the wild card performs this week. But you shouldn't be banking on it, that's for sure.
It's just because the Royals have struggled. Look at all these series losses. I mean, they swept against the Tigers, swept against the Giants. Then they have the Nats. The Royals do this week, and then they go to the Braves. And that's probably a good thing for the Mariners. Braves are on the outside looking in right now. They have a series with the Mets in the middle of the week that will, I think, almost determine the wild card spot. If the Mets win, they'll be in. If the Braves sweep, they will jump into that National League wildcard spot. But if they don't beat the Mets in this series, they're going to need to probably sweep the Royals to get in, which is to the Mariners' benefit. Both those teams are going to be playing as hard as possible to get into the playoffs. So that's a plus.
How hilarious would it be?
Do you know what's actually a good thing before you add on your point? Yeah, I think it's a good thing now the Tigers are the number 2 wild card, that you don't have to chase them. The odds of you catching them on how they were playing and who they finished the season with were slim.
Yeah.
But now they've passed the Twins and the Royals, which now that you only have to focus on the Twins or the Royals is a massive positive, even if you don't have the tiebreaker, because those teams are not playing as well as the Tigers are.
All right, let me set the scene here. It's game 162. Mariners are still in it. They have a chance. Every game starts at the same time that day. They play the A's, and they win. They win. Sold out ballpark at T-Mobile. Everybody stays inside the stadium to watch the Royals and the Braves. They need a Royals loss. They need a Royals loss to get in. And the entire crowd erupts thanks to a Braves win on a game-winning homer from Jared freaking Kelenic, baby.
Wow. There would be some people in those stands who had never cheered for him in his life. You know, people.
I'm manifesting that into existence. That Jared goes deep in game 162 or whatever meaningful game to help the Mariners get into the playoffs.
How much has he been playing recently? He's not been playing well.
I mean, he just plays against righties.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, it's a tough going. He's still got a chance, though. He's got a chance to help the M's out.
Be pretty sick. I would be laughing pretty hard to watch like Jerry and Justin and Mariners ownership like jumping up and down over a Kelenic home run. It's like, well, you need salary. Good thing we salary dumped him.
Kelenic saves the season after all.
Yeah, it's like they're all high-fiving over salary dumping him.
Now, here's my question for Jared. If the Braves are already out of the playoffs and his homer propelled the Mariners into the playoffs, speculation, what does Jared think?
What, are you insinuating that he'd strike out on purpose just to spite the entire franchise?
Well, we do know they didn't exactly leave on the best of terms. A lot of the same, a lot of the same people are in place. You know, people hold grudges. I'm just saying, as a speculative third party here, that Jared Kelenic steps up to the box. He taps his bat on home plate. He takes a deep breath. He might scan the ballpark. He might check the scoreboard. To do some calculations in his head, full well knowing, Braves are out of it right now, and he sees, that AL wildcard race is close. It's really close. My season's already not going that well. It's really not. Does one strikeout change that much?
No. No, it doesn't. That would
something to think about.
Well, listen, I think he's changed a little bit since he came up, but I will say this. How he is exactly right now, I can't confirm, but the Jared Kelenic that debuted in 2021, that dude, he would absolutely do something like that to spite the organization. Now, what he's like now, I don't know. The kid that came up in 2021, he would absolutely do that. And low key, again, to your point, it's like, well, my season already has been not up to the standards I wanted it to be. Would one strikeout really kill anybody? Knowing that in the back of my head, I was really the Joker setting the hospital on fire with a bomb, knowing I just totally spited the Mariners. Imagine if he hopped on Twitter. He hasn't been on Twitter in 3 years. Imagine if he hopped on Twitter for the first time in years, quote tweeted the tweet of the Mariners final score tweet from the last day of the season with the Joker meme just walking away from the hospital.
Are there any lyrics in Country Roads where it's I know it's take me home, but is there any send you home? Because then to really tie it back to the M's, he puts some Country Roads lyrics on there.
Listen, people, this is where these podcasts are going at this point. We don't have like specific Mariner storylines to do to break down players or break down trends. Like, this is where we're at. Like, what does everybody care about right now? How do the Mariners get into the playoffs? How can it happen? Who has to give them help around the league? So here's what we're talking about. We're sitting here talking about how Jared Kelenic could either purposely spite the organization with a strikeout or propel them into a playoff spot, potentially.
Can we talk a little bit about his former minor league mate who just won Player of the Week? Want to do that?
Sure.
Well, despite how his season has been as a whole, which is actually, it's turning out pretty nice. Julio Rodriguez's reputation of this 2024 season, I think, like, if he continues what he's doing for this week and the Mariners make the playoffs, I think you and I are going to need to, we'll make our statements, I'd say, about it when it arrives and when we talk about it, because we'd obviously have postseason baseball to talk about. But the perception of Julio Rodriguez's 2024 season, if he keeps up this stretch he's on where his last 23 games, he has over 1,000 OPS, he has 8 home runs, he's been unbelievable. Where if he drags this team into the playoffs, doing what he is doing, and his numbers at the end of the year look like, 120 WRC plus, he's worth 4 wins. And a lot of people will be like, was it really that bad?
I mean, this is what we said a couple weeks ago when we were evaluating Julio, when we did it on one of our former podcasts. We said that if he got so hot in September that he propelled this team into the playoffs, that yes, we would reevaluate where we're at with Julio Rodriguez in 2024, because that's a big deal. It's funny, he's not far off all of a sudden from ending with 4 Fangraphs WAR for the year and a 120 WRC plus, which is hilarious to say, because just a short month ago, it didn't feel like he was even going to get close to that. Entering today, he was at a 3.7 Fangraphs WAR and about a 116 WRC plus. So
he's up to 117 now.
Oh, so 117. Well, it hasn't updated yet for today's
game.
No,
so, it's updated. No, this is the updated one for today. 117.
Like it already updated the Astros game tonight?
Fangraphs has the little live update thing before it updates everything else. So it's at 117 right now after his 3-hit day today. So
it's pretty good.
There's a real chance, and he is going to reach 4 wins. Unless he doesn't get a hit the rest of the season, he's probably going to reach a 4-win season. So then you compare it to the rest of his seasons, Lyle. I mean, we're talking about a 4-win season opposed to a 6 from last year. There's only going to be 8 points of WRC plus separation between this season and last season, and he had the nuclear August to really propel his season last year. Well, since July 1st, let's do July 4th because it's a more cherry picked and looks a lot better. He's almost been that hot over that stretch. So it's been a longer sample. On top of that, there was an injury in the middle of it, and what happens if he doesn't get hurt and he actually can he doesn't have to stop playing for 3 weeks and nurse nurse an injured ankle to get back into shape. It's remarkable the kind of talent he has to get back on track. And I just want to kind of laugh a little bit since we've brought up Jared and Julio. And if we want to go back to, speaking of July 4th, when Julio really turned it around, what we did on July 1st, comparing those two, yes, official statement of the Marine Layer podcast, Jared Kelenic and Julio Rodriguez have gone in complete opposite directions since we did that episode. That's just a fact.
And just to add more detail to that, on that episode, we proclaimed they've been the same offensive player over the last year and a half, because at that time, both of them had a 112 WRC plus since the start of 2023. And, well, it has really gone 2 opposite directions since then. So, yes, Julio is the better player.
Julio, I'll say that actually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, Julio just has the ability to be an aircraft carrier when he gets hot and lift this team, and anchor an offense, basically. However, I will say, in spite of all that, look, if we just read the numbers at the end of the year to try to summarize the season, and we see 4 Fangraphs wins, 120 WRC plus, that's objectively a very good year. That's an all-star level year. And nobody can dispute that. That being said, if you want to look just past the basics like that, like season overall as a whole, because he's gotten so hot when he has, if they don't make the playoffs, there are going to be very much vibes to Julio's hot September stretch of Chris Paul hits huge 3 to cut the deficit to 42.
Though he got a little closer. So first point, I'm going to give us a pat on the back. Remarkably good content timing. Mm-hmm. Right? Remarkably good, especially when they started going their other directions. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm going to start that. What we said at that moment was true. So we don't regret it for a second. But it is also objectively true is that the talent Julio Rodriguez has shown at the big league level has since elevated him and has shown why he is a better baseball player than Jared Kelenic is. That is a fact. But it's interesting you bring up Julio's season as a whole. You look at it objectively and you say, very good season. But there's also, I feel like there does need to be context because Julio had to do a lot of growing during this season. The season as a whole looks like, he looks like a young star having a good season with really good defense in center. And he had to deal with an injury? Oh, man. Well, it's amazing he managed to get through all of it and finish this hot. That's great. But we also understand the context of the season is that a lot of the Mariners' offensive struggles throughout the year can also directly tie back to him. That also can be true. Mm-hmm. The first half of the season, if he was hitting like he was right now, we wouldn't be talking about the Mariners' offense like we talked about back then. It would be a different tone significantly, and they would have won more games. Even though they were winning games back then, they would have won more because that's what having a player to Julio's caliber does about that. So there needs to be layers to how his season is evaluated going into next year when we talk about it. I don't think you could just blanketly say, he had a objectively good, complete 2024 season. Mm-hmm. He had a very good second half of his 2024 season, but he still needs to show, and he'd agree, full season. If he does that for a full season, he's an MVP candidate. No one's doubting that.
Yeah. But all you can hope for in the final 6 games of the year, 5 now, 5 games of the year, he stays hot and he continues to anchor this offense because that is the only way they're getting into the playoffs. He has to continue doing this. Has to.
Yep.
Hopefully he can do it the rest of this Astros series. If you want a quick preview what the pitching matchups are going to be for the final 2 games of this set, it's Framber versus Logan Gilbert on Tuesday when this podcast gets released. And it's going to be Yusei Kikuchi and George Kirby on Wednesday. So hopefully Logan and George put together some of their best starts of the year paired with the offense stays hot, and Julio himself has to stay hot.
The Mariners season's going to end in daylight with Yusei Kikuchi on the bump.
God, that would just be so fitting. So unbelievably fitting.
Talk about people who are not huge fans of the Mariners organization. Mr. Yusei Kikuchi, as far as we know, not a huge fan.
Has he said that publicly? I actually don't remember.
I don't think so, but he wasn't exactly lining up to sign back with the Mariners. I know that he didn't like how he was used.
Well, the Mariners did yank him out of the rotation because he'd been so bad the final week of 2021 because they didn't trust him. So, of course he didn't re-sign.
So then that actually will revisit. Do the Mariners, do they dislike him more as a pitcher, or does he dislike them more as an organization?
I don't know.
Something to think about.
Maybe he wasn't getting his 14 hours of sleep in Seattle. I don't know.
So I guess we will know on Wednesday if he's like flipping the double bird up at the press box as he's walking off after his 7 shutout innings on Wednesday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that would be pretty telling. It is really going to suck if that happens. That man is going to do the Mariners in to end the season.
You know that would just be so fitting, especially if they win the first 2 games, too. Everybody's hopes are all of a sudden close to all the way back up, and then you say just as the silencer on Wednesday afternoon.
Speaking of one of the reasons they didn't make the playoffs in 2021, especially in the second half, Mr. Kikuchi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's sad.
Also, the fact that
it's very fitting. This is why the Astros traded for him. They didn't trade for him just to pitch big innings. They traded for him for this very series. They know it's getting in the brains of the Mariners right here. Some of those Mariners who have been on this team since 2021, Dylan Moore, it's going to be just right in the brain here. It's just going to be ingrained right in the Mariners, right in the psyche of this team of watching that man on the mound.
there's not that
series.
many Mariners on this
There's
team.
not. I know. I was trying to think on the fly. It's like Demo,
Haniger, Cal.
In his second stint since then. Yeah. Cal.
That's it. Or JP.
Yeah. JP, yeah. Wow. No Abe. Wow. Funny.
Well, he should be here.
No. If we're talking about, the Astros should probably claim him on, sign him at a AAA for this series. I'm shocked they didn't do that. Reunite with their farmhand.
Just to spite you? Yeah.
Yeah, could they do that? Can you sign? You can't sign players out of AAA. He'd need to be waived, right? Yeah, he'd need to be waived. But that would be the ultimate FU to the Mariners. They sign Yusei and Abe Toro for this final series of the season. And, Abe parks a couple in the Crawford boxes. Yusei goes 7 shutout. Yeah.
And that's how the season ends.
That's how the season ends. And then you and I show up on Friday's episode with the Joker masks on our face.
Well, one of us can do a Joker mask. One of us can just have a paper bag over our head.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be pretty funny to do regardless. We should actually low-key think about that. Like the first podcast we do after the season ends, if they don't make the playoffs, just do bags on our heads to start the episode. That would low-key be pretty funny. I'm in.
Yeah, we'll think about that idea. We'll think about that. We're gonna have a content meeting about that.
Yeah. I have a very important programming note for people before we start to kind of put the show to a close. However, before that, let us take a quick pause. We're talking to you about our friends at Pagach's Pub 85 because it's an awesome spot to go hang out. You want to go watch the final week of the Mariners season? You want to go hang out with your friends and watch the games? Head over there. There's great food. There's great drinks. There's darts. There's pool. There's everything you need for a good time at a sports bar with your friends. And if you go during happy hour, 2 to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, those are the happy hours. Drinks are $3 and $4. Those are pretty good deals. In fact, I'd even say they're really good deals. All that is over at Pagach's Pub 85 in Kirkland. Go head over. Okay. Quick programming note so everybody knows. Because we are in the final week of the regular season, we're changing around our schedule for these podcasts being released just a little bit, just for this week. So, this episode, as you will clearly see listening to this and watching this, is coming out on Tuesday. Nothing's changing about any episodes being released Fridays. Those will be there. The only difference is for this show and the following show we put out next week, it will be not on Wednesday. It will be Monday. So, in other words, this show's coming out Tuesday. We've got then an episode Friday, as we'll recap the rest of the Astros series, preview the A series. We're going to do a podcast on Monday, like the morning right after the regular season ends. And then if they don't make the playoffs, then our next episode after that Monday episode will be Friday, in which case we'll just be back to regular programming at that point. But we figured it's better to do an episode Tuesday rather than Wednesday, because then if we wait till Wednesday, there's 2 Astros games that are done. We release one on Friday. There's only one game to talk about. Just felt like a little bit better way to chop it up in the final week. And that's what we're going to do it. So yeah, Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Friday. Then after that, we'll be back to normal.
And if there are playoffs, we'll probably do every game. But
yeah,
they got to make it first.
They have to make it. Yeah. Now, if they make the playoffs, things change drastically. Then yes, we are probably doing an episode immediately right after every game.
Right.
But if they don't, that's our schedule. So
yeah. So yeah, stay tuned to that. It'll be back on regular schedule. Like the full week is not the week after the season, the next week after that.
Right.
We'd be back to normal. So it'd be the second week of October. We would be fully back to normal. And that Monday episode will be very telling of the tone of the season. We got to buckle up, folks.
Yeah.
It is again must-win territory. It is you should not lose a game the rest of the season if you are anticipating making the playoffs. Right now.
Yes. One more time, nothing's changing about Friday episodes. There'll still be shows out on Fridays. It's just, again, one more time, it's Tuesday, Friday, Monday, Friday. So, now you know. All right, like TJ said, buckle up, everybody. It's going to be quite the final week one way or another. So, I think we're all interested to see how it goes. That'll just about wrap up this edition of the Marine Layer Podcast. You guys know the drill. You want to listen to the full form pod, you can do so wherever you get your audio podcasts. Make sure to download. Make sure to leave a 5-star review, rate and review, all that good stuff. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the subscribe button. Click it. It's a big red button. Just make sure to push it if you're watching it. It does us big time favors. So do that. Like, comment, all that good stuff. And on social media, we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube Shorts, @MarineLayerPod. That's TJ. I'm Lyle. As always, we thank you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.